on Sightings is the planet Earth on a countdown to Doomsday.
The loss of life will be staggering.
We uncover the startling evidence. Then, a Russian fighter pilot who survived a frightening close encounter with a UFO. And our psychic makes contact with a sinister ghost molester.
It is still attracted to the younger girls.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Since our last report on predictions and prophecies, the response from our viewers has been overwhelming. There appears to be an inexhaustible fascination with the future. Well, now, with the approach of not only a new century, but a new millennium, the number of people making long-range predictions is growing. Some of these modern-day prophets are obviously more reputable than others. But might one of them be the new Nostradamus? In the 15th century, Michel Nostradamus believed he saw the future. Interpreters of his work say he predicted major 20th century events, such as the rise of Nazi Germany, the atomic bomb, and great natural disasters. But are there prophets among us now who have the ability to see the distant future, as well as events that are only weeks and months away?
We are going to lose a lot of lives. We're going to lose them through earthquakes, from volcanoes, from disease.
Civilization is going to collapse, and we are going to see earth changes in the very near future.
Like our ancestors said, the world will capsize and you will be destroyed.
Gordon Michael Scallion and Richard Kinninger are contemporary prophets. Time may prove them to be heirs to Nostradamus' power of prophecy. Deep in the woods of rural New Hampshire, electrical engineer Gordon Michael Scallion claims he's been having disturbing visions since 1979. According to Scallion, the Earth is about to go through massive changes that will drastically alter the surface of the planet. And, he warns, time is running out.
A spring of '93 would be remembered in the future as when it all began, and life changed as we know it. In 1998, perhaps sooner, the United States will look much different than today. 25% of its landmass will have gone underwater. We see Denver being a seaport. Portions of Louisiana goes underwater. The Great Lakes change, go underwater. Michigan becomes islands.
Scallion claims to receive his visions while in a trance-like state, assisted by his wife, Cynthia Keys. He believes he can then communicate directly with the Earth. Scallion has a high rate of accuracy, predicting the devastating Hurricane Andrew that hit South Florida and the earth-shaking 7.6 Landers quake in California last summer. What's next? Scallion predicts the entire planet will be plagued by a series of catastrophes, beginning in California.
The next event that California will experience will be a quake that will be greater than 8. It will create flooding. The bridges and highways, especially the bridges that cross other bridges, will come down. It is now, in my opinion, a 95% probability that it will occur between March and May 9th.
Scallion believes this unprecedented quake and its crippling effect on California will be just the precursor of greater disasters to come.
I believe a quake in the magnitude greater than 10 will divide California north to south and literally create islands. The loss of life will be staggering.
We don't think that the largest quake possible is any larger than 9.5, and that's anywhere in the world.
Dr. Kate Hutton is a seismologist at the California Institute of Technology, the world's leading repository of earthquake data.
We've had several of those this century already. We had the 1960 Chile earthquake, 9.5, and the Alaskan earthquake in '64, 9.2. Neither of those destroyed civilization.
Despite scientific skepticism, There are many people who believe civilization will change forever after cataclysmic seismic activity. Author Richard Kinnicker believes that a rare planetary alignment on May 5th in the year 2000 will create forces great enough to alter the surface of the Earth.
Everything will be changed everywhere. But that doesn't mean that all species will be wiped out or mankind will be wiped out. And it just will be brought back again to basics. And probably many parts of the world will experience a Stone Age for maybe a generation or two.
In 1973, Kinnicker founded the community of Stell, Illinois, where he gathered like-minded individuals who would prepare for the coming Earth changes in an apocalyptic future.
The idea is really to be as self-sufficient as we can, because there'll be times where the grids will be down and we won't be able to access power from the grid. Stell is trying to survive by the use of common sense, logic, and forethought.
Although Kinnicker is no longer associated with Stell, he has formed a new community in Texas. It's called Adelphi and is home to more than 100 people who help in the construction and maintenance of the town. There are also plans to start a third community, named Philadelphia, on an island in the Pacific Ocean. There, his followers believe they can start a new cradle of civilization, if they can survive.
The survival is best guaranteed by getting off the surface of the Earth for 3 days or so, by using the lighter-than-air craft of a special design. There are many people in Stell and Adelphi who are planning to contribute towards the construction of such aircraft in order to get off the surface.
Is there a scientific basis for any of these catastrophe prophecies?
We're looking at what has been happening over the last 5 million years, and it would be very surprising for us to have it change suddenly now. I guess things do change over the history of the Earth, but I don't think it changes that suddenly.
Dr. Hutton and most other Earth scientists believe in what is known as uniformitarian geology. That's the geology most of us were taught in school, that suggests Earth changes occur gradually over millions of years. Author and archaeologist David Childress is an adherent of what is known as cataclysmic geology.
Earth changes and geological change can happen very rapidly and suddenly. Mountain ranges and other Earth changes happen not over millions of years, but over in a period of days or hours. The evidence for ancient catastrophes and cataclysms is overwhelming to us. For instance, it is a known archaeological fact that there are more than 200 sunken cities in the Mediterranean alone.
Although conventional science discounts these prophecies, it is hard to ignore the accuracy of Gordon Michael Scallion or the sincerity of those who have formed communities based on the beliefs of Richard Kinnicker. Do they know something we have yet to find out? And should we pay attention to these prophecies? Perhaps the answer lies in ancient Zuni wisdom.
The ancestors said, if you don't love each other and behave in a good manner, it may rain hot water. The stars may fall, towns will be destroyed, and the end will be near.
Joining us now is clinical psychologist Dr. Terence Sandbeck, who specializes in the relationship between psychology and the paranormal. Dr. Sandbeck, if there's a prediction of doom or disaster, is there any evidence that people change their lifestyles, change their behavior because of it?
Well, I think for the most part, probably most people don't change their lifestyle. But there are always the few who take it seriously and have to make some drastic change in what they do because someone has made some wild prediction.
Why is it that people seem to be drawn to prophecies of doom and gloom more so than the upbeat and positive stories?
It just seems to be the fact that that's what draws people's attention. Maybe it's the same reason we will follow a fire engine to a fire rather than a limousine to a wedding.
We're coming up on the year 2000. Do you expect there to be an increasing number of prophecies?
Of course. Probably more than we had in the year 200 and more than we had in the year 20. There'll be lots of prophecies. They'll have no more validity. They'll have no more realism than any prophecies given at any other time.
Dr. Sandbeck, thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
And we will be back with more sightings in just a moment.
When we return, a Russian Top Gun fighter pilot who survived a frightening close encounter with a UFO tells his story in a Sightings exclusive. Coming up next.
Who claim to have had contact with UFOs. Unfortunately, these reports remain unconfirmed because the pilots are reluctant to come forward. But now, one former military pilot is talking. In Russia, Maxim Cherbakov was so convinced he'd been fired on by an alien spacecraft, he went to court to prove it. 2 years ago, a pilot in Russia came forward and told of a frightening UFO encounter. Risking ridicule, Maxim Cherbakov was determined to tell what he maintains is the true story of his bizarre experience. At 19, Cherbakov was one of the rising stars in the Soviet Military Flight Academy and became the Russian equivalent of a Top Gun. His flying record was impeccable until August 1991. Then, on 2 separate occasions, he had strange mechanical malfunctions in his jet aircraft. On one occasion, he was forced to eject. An investigation of that incident concluded that Cherbakov had acted calmly and rationally. But 12 days later, a third incident would change Cherbakov's life forever.
20th August, second shift. I made 2 flights with my commander, and third flight I made on my own. I gained an altitude of 3,900 meters. Then suddenly, I saw a ball in front of me, about 20 degrees to the right.
He watched the object for several seconds. Then, as it came toward him, Cherbakov tried to radio the base. The light from the UFO was blinding.
A sense of unexplainable fear came over me. On the back of my head, I began experiencing warmth. I felt as if someone was present and watching me. My movements were under control, controlled by someone other than me.
Cherbakov claims the reddish-yellow object started maneuvering around the aircraft. For several minutes, it kept up with the jet's airspeed and mimicked its movements. During that time, Cherbakov was unable to communicate with his base commander. The radio emitted only a squealing sound.
Pilot Cherbakov's description of the UFO moving relative to his own airplane is really quite common.
Dr. Richard Haynes has documented over 3,000 pilot sightings of UFOs.
I have thousands and thousands of cases of pilots in daylight encounters with structured objects in the sense of having three-dimensional mass, in the sense of having aerodynamic kinds of flight behavior relative to the aircraft. And so what he describes here fits in very nicely to what I have from hundreds of other pilots around the world.
Suddenly, in rapid-fire succession, the generator in Cherbakov's jet failed. The instruments indicated a fire on board, and the cockpit filled with smoke. The base commander ordered Cherbakov to eject.
I began arguing with the commander because the plane was still above the residential area. My altitude began to drop rapidly. I had to pull the plane out of a nosedive. At the altitude of 1,000 meters, I finally cleared the residential area and I ejected. 4 seconds later, the plane exploded.
Cherbakov landed safely in a field and was rescued an hour later by a military helicopter. While officials combed the wreckage of the jet, Cherbakov was examined at a military hospital. An intensive 3-day interrogation followed.
The interrogation was conducted with a sense of total distrust toward me. Right from the start, they told me that the first, the second, and now the third incident is all your own doing.
Cherbakov was also interrogated by the KGB, who did not believe his story and charged him with insubordination and sabotage under the International Terrorism Act. Cherbakov claims the KGB threatened that if he did not tell the truth, he would be brought to trial, found guilty of terrorism, and shot by a firing squad. Vladimir Azhaja heads the Russian Center for the Study of UFOs, housed in the Ministry of the Interior in Moscow. Dr. Azhaja is considered one of the world's foremost experts on UFO phenomena and has studied Cherbakov's case.
We concluded that Maxim has a normal, healthy psyche and is not inclined to fantasies.
Retired Major General Albert Stubbleblind is a former commanding general of U.S. Army intelligence. He witnessed and documented a hypnosis session conducted with Cherbakov by an American psychiatrist.
As she was taking him into the trance, he changed from this terrorized, fear-ridden kid into a pilot, sitting in the cockpit, sitting in the seat, sitting with the controls, relating what was going on. There was a change in the individual.
Anybody can fabricate. The question is, was he fabricating? And he struck me as a person who, in that situation, was not fabricating. Whatever it was that he was saying, he truly believed had happened to him. Maxime really believed he had not done anything wrong, in fact, had done the right thing, and desperately wanted this sorted out.
Although affidavits to that effect were presented at his court-martial hearing, the court still blamed Cherbakov for the destruction of his aircraft. But the military prosecutor admits that some of the evidence of Cherbakov's innocence was very convincing.
From the beginning, I had doubts about the truthfulness of Cherbakov's statement. But after questioning his mother, his comrades, and his superiors, I became convinced that Cherbakov had an encounter with a UFO.
In January 1992, the case against Maxim Cherbakov was dropped. But despite this vindication, he was not welcomed back into the military.
There is no training for pilots to deal with such encounters. The older pilots told me that a lot of encounters happen, but they don't speak about them. I feel that I'm missing something from my soul that I want very much. My love for the planes and flying has remained and will continue to remain.
Did Maxim Cherbakov see a UFO? We may never know the answer, but one thing is clear. Maxim Cherbakov ejected only after he saw that his jet would avoid populated areas below. There is now a movement underway in Russia to award Cherbakov with a medal for heroism. According to UFO researcher Richard Haynes, up to 15% of all pilots, both military and commercial, have reported some kind of contact with a UFO. Haynes believes the actual number could be quite a bit higher, since countless pilots are understandably reluctant to come forward.
When we return,
it is still attracted to the younger girls.
our psychic takes on the sinister ghost molester.
Be gone now!